What's the most ridiculous reason you've seen someone get fired? Years ago, another manager in my group started the process to fire a guy who had been on a performance improvement plan for months because he stopped showing up for work. Turns out, he had a valid excuse. He and his girlfriend had been murdered. It took almost a week to find his body and significantly longer to find his girlfriend's body. Story 2. I was fired when the company changed my job responsibilities after 2 years and I refused to do it. Worked for an HVAC company as an electrician. My job was simple: run power to ACS, furnaces, water heaters, etc. Then my boss wanted me to start being a salesman and encourage customers to buy things they don't need, such as $600 thermostat, electric furnace filters, sub panels if their panel was low on room. Stuff that's not necessary, but luxury item. These people are already spending a bunch of money on a new furnace/AC. I didn't want to squeeze every penny out of them. I'm not a salesman, I only wanted to do my electrical work. Boss didn't like that and said I'm not fulfilling my duties and fired me. I was okay with that. Story 3. Worked for Brunswick Zone, the bowling center chain, when we were sold to another operator. Employees were always entitled to free sodas from the snack bar. Somewhere in the change of owners, they mandated the cup for employee sodas be wrung out at the POS, but didn't communicate that to 2 longtime snack bar workers. When they, over time, reached some threshold of cups taken, they were terminated for theft. Story 4. A support team manager got a newish team member sacked for performance issues. The tech was good at their job, but the manager just did not like them. Getting rid of the tech reduced the team size to a small enough size where the manager was no longer needed and was sacked themselves. This all happened in a period of 20 minutes. Story 5. I worked in HR at a factory that made mufflers. 1. Employee told his manager to suck after being asked why he was just standing in the middle of the warehouse pathway that forklifts drive through. This was his first actual day working, not an orientation. 2. Employee was supposed to put a simple green mark on a finished part after inspecting it to mark that it was inspected. He started drawing junks, boobs, butts all over the parts. He did this on about 60 parts before manager caught it. All of them had to be pulled from a last-minute rush job to Ford, costing a lot of money. 3. Employee followed his female coworker after shift to a gas station nearby and forced a hug on her. He freely admitted it to me and said I couldn't do crap because it didn't happen at work. It was my most cathartic termination I've ever done. 4. Janitor got mad because someone stunk up the bathroom from normal use and cut the water line to ice machine to punish everyone on shift. 5. Leadership kept having me hire people well into the end of the year to try to get extra help on the floor to meet quotas. Then a week before Christmas, my boss, the HR manager, had me lay off/terminate the last 10 employees because they wanted their staff numbers to look good when they reported it at the end of the year. I have never felt like a bigger piece of crap in my entire life and still hate those assholes for treating people like that. I am glad I no longer work there. Story 6. My asshole brother-in-law got fired for stealing someone's cheese in the factory lunchroom. Unusual reason, but getting rid of him was an excellent idea. Story 7. I got let go from Best Buy for doing chemotherapy instead of going to work even after I submitted time off requests and every manager knew I was fighting for my life. Story 8. He was so enthusiastic and eager to learn that it raised suspicion among managers. They believed him to be a spy from a rival company, so he was fired. It's the first and only time I've seen anyone being fired for working too hard. Story 9. Knew a guy that used to do video game testing. Basically a bunch of young guys in a trailer playing games and talking crap. They got to betting on the games and it escalated to him losing and having to drink a Dixie cup of his own piss. Boss got wind of it and had to can him. Said he had to draw the line somewhere. And drinking your own piss at work was across that line. Story 10. Day shift manager didn't do any work all day and left it for the night shift manager. Night shift manager called and complained to district manager via a phone call. District manager showed up and fired the night shift manager for complaining. I saw it happen and quit in solidarity. F.U. Domino. Story 11. The company had hired a new person and my coworker was tasked to train him, but he hadn't yet been set up in the system to access the software that he needed to be trained on. So my coworker let the new hire use her login for training purposes. This was common practice for a long time, since it usually took a few days for the new user's access to be set up, and without that, they couldn't be trained. The company then decided to enforce the rule that employees are only allowed to access the system using their own accounts. So, without even being given a warning, a well-liked coworker was fired for doing the job that she was told to do. Story 12. I got fired while on maternity leave. My job realized after I was on leave that I wasn't actually eligible for leave because I hadn't been with the company for a year. When I went in to pick up my paycheck, they told me I would need to come back to work or they'd have to let me go. Then they told me I'd have to have a doctor's note to return to work, which my doctor denied. This was all just a couple of days after I had had my first baby. After all that, they fought my unemployment. I did get unemployment and stayed home until it ran out, which ended up being wonderful. Looking back, I wish I had sued them, but I was young and dumb. Story 13, the owner of a factory we did some contracting work for, allegedly fired an employee for leaving the warehouse lights on. The warehouse lights had motion sensors. Story 14, me, for telling my boss I was tired of being his verbal abuse punching bag. And when he continued, I may have said, well, this explains why your wife left you. You throw a tantrum like a toddler. Story 15. Had a hospital guard get fired because he was on a pediatric watch, then when it was like 2 a.m. and he desperately needed to pee. Problem was he couldn't take his eyes at the kid's room despite the kid being asleep. And this was before all the guards got radios on their watches, so he couldn't call someone up to relieve him. Instead of going and asking the nurses to take over, he had the brilliant idea that he would just pee in the patient washroom right across from the kid's room and keep the door open so he could keep watching the kid's door out of the mirror. Charge nurse walked by and he said bye to his job. Story 16. I was fired for not fitting in with the culture at a job at the end of my probationary period. Actually, the exact words from my supervisor during my last evaluation was, "Concerned I don't seem to get along with the guys." He even told me I was doing a good job work-wise, but didn't seem happy, and if I wanted to resign, we wouldn't hold it against you. Thing is, I just kept to myself and did my job because I was excluded and bullied by them. This wasn't hazing or busting balls, and I'm not thin-skinned. This was high school, don't talk to me loser kind of crap. I didn't bother anyone. I was actually content keeping to myself and treating it like a job and not a social club, especially since it was a good opportunity with pay, healthcare, pension, and Monday through Friday holidays off. Not good enough for them. Was canned a few days after that meeting with the supervisor. Not a good fit bullcrap. Never called off, never late, never disciplined, good performance reviews. Story 17. They hired the wrong guy. 2 candidates, very similar names. They had just finished onboarding him when they realized that he should be a she according to HR, realized someone, somewhere, had ducked up and offered the job to the wrong person. They fired the guy on the spot. Story 18. A few months before an employee was eligible for pension benefits, he was fired for accidentally breaking a light bulb. Had no history of disciplinary action in the many years he worked for the company. He just should have been more cautious with company property, something that was not expensive and is easily broken. Complete coincidence that firing him absolved the business from paying the pension he worked decades to earn. Story 19. At my wife's company. A couple years ago, the executive admin to the CEO stole the CFO's personal debit card, then opened a tab at the bar and bought people drinks all night at the company Christmas party. Story 20. A guy was caught pleasure himself in a company vehicle on the job site. Pretty easy termination there. This was before smartphones existed as well. He had a ducking magazine. Story 21. We had a good relationship with a big wireless carrier, and they set up an exclusive deal where our employees could get a steep discount on certain phone accessories, including one that was like $10 for a normally $200 item. However, they neglected to put any quantity limits on it. A few coworkers got it into their heads to order a bunch of them and sell them on eBay for profit to the tune of thousands, and in one case, over $10,000. One of them even asked their manager if it was okay. The manager not only said it was okay without consulting anyone, but they started doing the same thing themselves. Eventually, the carrier figured out what was happening, and apparently executive leadership on both sides got involved. All of the people involved, including the manager, were fired. Story 22. At a lettuce packing shed, the secretary walked in the office with 2 heads of lettuce in her arms. She said, "Who wants some head? Fired. Exit. I don't get it." Story 23. I saw myself fired for pointing out in a staff meeting that the reason we lost a big bid was because somebody added 5% to the final cost. Unknown to me, the VP of sales added that markup and had me terminated the next day. Story 24. Back in 1989, my father was forced to fire an expat employee at a petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia for eating lukaimat, which are like donut holes, in the office during Ramadan, the Muslim period of fasting. The man was not Muslim, but that was irrelevant. In Saudi Arabia, it was not only insensitive for a non-Muslim to eat in front of a Muslim during Ramadan, it was also illegal. The government revoked his visa, and he was deported. Those were very costly donut holes. Story 25. I was let go because corporate HQ in Switzerland wanted to move our office from San Francisco area to New York City so they could have a more prestigious address. 6 people lost jobs that had nothing to do with location, and they never got their Manhattan address and had to settle for an address far outside of New York City. Story 26. Hired a young guy as our shipper. Did a pretty good job. About 2 months later, he didn't show up on a Friday morning. Called in late in the day saying his grandmother died and was busy with the family. Offered condolences. We all signed a card and gave it to him when he came back on a Tuesday. A couple weeks later, my production manager told me that he'd lied and had actually partied all weekend. Okay, about 2 months later, the same thing happened. He called in late on a Friday saying his grandmother died and would be away for a few days. Smelling a rat, I went through his file and found the contact information for his mother. Called her, offered our condolences, and asked where our company could send flowers. She was a little confused because both his grandmothers were alive. We fired him the moment he walked in the door. Story 27. A few years back, a contractor who worked for my company was having problems with his company-issued laptop and had to go to head office to get it fixed by the IT department. He had to tell them his password that he had chosen. It was something along the lines of, "I duck you, instant dismissal." Story 28. I got fired from my first job as a go-kart track attendant because I couldn't run the track alone. I had been running the track alone for over a week while my partner drank beer and ate sandwiches with the boss. Story 29. Worker used her government computer to get on a dating site for people with herpes during work time. It was a difficult firing to sit in on as the attorney. Story 30. Worked in a research/teaching lab for 15 or so years. My teaching feedback from external inspectors was that my teaching was outstanding, inspirational, and humbling. I hate typing that. It makes me seem like but I feel it's relevant backstory. New boss came and said all male members of staff had to wear a tie done up to the top and a blazer at all time. Female staff, of course, could wear whatever they wanted. I protested. I was removed. Story 31. I have a friend who used to work in HR at an open pit coal mine that used big mining dump trucks. He had to fire a driver of one of these massive pieces of equipment when the driver put a brick on the gas pedal to keep it moving so that he could go pee off the side of the truck. They go very slow, but you can see how this would still be a problem. To top it off, the guy was reported in the first place because while he was peeing off the side with his pants open, he drove past some female coworkers and waved at them. Story 32. My mom caught COVID, probably while she was working. She went on FMLA, went into a coma. Hobby Lobby sent a letter firing her for non-contact. She died 2 days later. Story 33. This is back when I had an office job. One day, a story came out in the local press about the owner of a comedy club I performed at being accused of all sorts of harassment. I was floored since the article mentioned quite a few people I knew. I sent the link my supervisor. I got fired because sharing this article about harassment violated the harassment policy, somewhat understandable, but definitely the most ridiculous way I've been fired. Story 34. I was fired from Rural King for not getting enough people to sign up for the free rewards program. I was written up on Friday, and a coworker sent me a picture of my termination notice before my shift on Saturday. How did they get a picture of it? Because management left it up on the customer service desk for everyone to see when they clocked in. Also, same manager told me harassment didn't exist when I expressed concern for my safety after a customer, estimating 60 seconds M, called the store to ask for my phone number and for me to meet him after I clocked out that day. I was early 20s at the time. Oh, another job, nursing home, fired me because I was pumping too long. I was overproducing breast milk at the time, and I'd pump for maybe 20 minutes to get it all out. Mastitis wanted to be my bestie during my year of breastfeeding. I was also harassed at that job. Male residents would make crude comments and take photos, and the janitor would try to come into the room I used to pump several times. Story 35. I got fired because my boss was ducking an employee in a lateral position to me, and she decided that was a license to do whatever the duck she wanted, including taking a full-salary mental health break for 3 months and generally refusing to do any of her job duties so that she could focus on her passion project. Teaching recently decarcerated folks to code, which is badass. Except it was in the same tiny campus as our program for high schoolers, and legal correctly told us it was business death. So we had to get her to quit. And of course she leveraged that decision into a swollen severance that, you guessed it, required my salary to pay. My only misdeed was not ducking him if I really think about it. I got no severance, simply a 2 a.m. today is your last day perfunctory email. Both of them went skiing a lot, if you catch my drift. I hope they're better now, and also that their crotches are perpetually plagued with the fleas of 1,000 camels. Story 36. As a CPA, I was warning upper management that they needed to switch their accounting program to something more modern like QuickBooks. The current accounting program's last update was in 1996 and was on a razor's edge of crashing. Unfortunately, the president was 1,000 years old and could care less since he spent 8 months out of the year in Colorado/Montana. The VP spent money quicker than he earned it and claimed it wasn't in the budget low, and behold, one morning I come in and the program has completely crashed. Not even the accounting end. The entire damn program that had customer balances, customer information, card information, addresses, phone numbers, etc. So, in a fit of rage, the VP fired me for not adequately warning management of the failing system. I packed my box and walked out with a smile on my face. Reason being is an uploaded all information to a series of hard drives, which the president knew of because I got his permission. The president flew in the next day and was blowing up my phone, promising me the sun if I came back and cleaned up the mess. Story 37. A woman got fired because she dared to have a seizure at work. Ambulance was called. Didn't matter. She had to leave early, and they went by a point system, and she'd ran out of points. Story 38. I graduated high school. 2 weeks before starting college, I got a student job pushing papers in some department. I started on a Monday, along with 3 other students. On Thursday, 3 out of the 4 students, including me, were fired over budget cuts. The lady that fired me said everybody in the department wanted to keep me, but they were forced to keep the worst student of all because they had to keep the student with the most financial need. Story 39. I got fired for pointing out paying someone more solely because of their ethnicity was actually illegal in Canada. Boss literally said, "Art makes more because he's Portuguese." I replied, "That's not legal," and was informed I wasn't needed any longer. Was a summer job as a university student in 1987. Story 40. I once got fired for emailing my direct boss to remind her that I needed her signature on a vendor contract. It was apparently this second email that was unbearable, and I was told so in the meeting where they fired me. No, it doesn't make sense. And no, there's no additional context / infractions / whatever that I'm omitting. A few weeks later, I found out I was the record holder for that role because I lasted more than 2 months. Story 41. Dude was hired as a semi-truck driver. We had one rule, and that was leave the keys in the office at the end of every day. This dumbass was caught on camera and GPS fueling up the truck on Friday night, taking the truck home, and using it to custom haul loads all around the Midwest on the weekend. Got the truck back Monday with 1,400 extra miles on it and a set of door magnets with his company name on it. He was employed for a grand total of 5 days. Story 42. This was in early 2000s. We had an Indian guy who was apparently fresh off the boat and just joined our team in IT department. His cubicle mate, female, noticed that dude was watching adult film on company computer. He got fired right on the spot. It's kind of hilarious because he wasn't even employed for a full week. Story 43. I used to work at a gym and my old boss hired a regular at the gym. Super nice college kid we all knew. First 2 minutes at the job, he brings him to his office, and a few minutes later he came and said, "He fired me." We were all confused and asked what happened, and the kid said, "I told him I couldn't work on Sundays before 10 a.m. because of church." That old boss told him, "You're not going to come in here and dictate your schedule to me," and said, "Get out of my gym. I don't need you." Story 44. I worked in the music / electronics department of a department store in the 90s. One of my coworkers was a huge Dave Matthews fan. He got fired for buying one of his CDs before the street date. The registers would block scanning it, so he had someone ring up as a generic item with a code. There may have been other factors, but that was the official story. Story 45. This is bad ridiculous. One employee left for another job. My coworker was going through her emails since she was covering her work and came across a ton of deleted emails with vicious gossip about people around the office with one other person. That person got fired. Don't gossip on company email. Story 46. I basically got fired because the CEO thought my job was so easy that to save costs, I could be replaced with the office cleaning lady. Last I heard, the whole department I basically had kept going by myself was a burning car crash because it turns out the job wasn't easy, I was just good at it. Story 47. Lawyer Liz was fired from her position of pardon attorney at the DOJ for not wanting to apply pardons to criminals who did not deserve pardon. Capable, ethical, experienced lawyers are not wanted in the DOJ. Try figuring that one out. Story 48. Restaurant I used to work at. This happened after I left, but a buddy of mine was still bartending. He gets a call by a manager on his day off. Other bartender called in sick, and they needed a fill-in. He let them know it was his off day and he had already been drinking. Manager basically said, as long as you aren't crap-faced and can still work, come on in. So he did. A guy from corporate showed up during the shift and made his typical round. Smelled the alcohol on MG Buddy's breath and told the other managers he had to be fired, which yay corporate policy and legal reasons you can't work if you've been drinking. But did the managers that told him to come in after he let them know he was drinking stick up for him? Hell no. Story 49. I got fired a long time ago for sending a fax for an ex-friend from my work's fax machine. He claimed his was broken. I didn't read it, so I guess that's on me. But it turned out it was transcripts from AIM chats or something of his wife and her affair partner, one of the partners at the law firm she worked at. It went to the fax machine in the reception area, and apparently word spread pretty quick. My company thought it was just some crazy lady calling and screaming until they reviewed the camera footage, saw me sending the fax, and fired me essentially on the spot. Oops, story 50. For the boss or employee? Boss. Fired important workers in completely different departments. Employee. Showed up 3 days every month on a good month. Was always half asleep and fell asleep while riding an important machine. Wait, he was never fired. Story 51. I fired a 19-year-old on his first day for drinking watermelon Gatorade with vodka. Whole strong of staff and customer complaints. I didn't really have a choice. Story 52. Coworker got fired due to being on leave to take care of his dying mother. Manager was annoyed at how he spent 3 months away dealing with that whilst not being on paternity leave because the coworker was single. Guess who got fired a week later? The manager, because of all the HR complaints made about him for firing the coworker. Story 53. I once heard someone got fired for rearranging the office furniture without permission. Like, moving a chair 2 feet apparently counts as a career-ending offense. Story 54. VP fired for stealing off the salad bar. Managed the corporate HQ cafeteria for a major financial services group. On the floor during lunch one day, and the woman who worked the deli station motioned me over. Watch that woman in the green dress. I've seen her do this the last 3 days. Sure enough, she goes around our massive salad bar filling a bowl. Then she grabs a large soup cup and fills it with shredded poached chicken breast and caps it. Leaves the cup on the counter, pays for her salad at the register, then goes back into the serving area to grab a few packs of saltines and the cup of chicken she stashed. Nobody ducks with my food cost. Turns out she was V-Suite. Bye-bye job and escorted out by security. Story 55. Saw a dishwasher get fired because he was eating leftover food on the plates being brought in from the dining room. Would just stuff it into his mouth using his hands while working. Story 56. Well, not exactly fired. I refused to play volleyball in our company. Fun day. CEO was going to fire me, but I quit first. Super duper crazy, toxic place. Story 57. Not outright fired, but put on a PIP, so basically the pit stop before getting fired. Because 2 weeks after I started as a junior designer fresh out of school, someone with a marketing degree and no prior experience was promoted to UX manager. She was incompetent and disorganized and accused me of not sending her things she asked for when she, in her own words, sometimes overorganized. A KA took the emails out of her general inbox and stored them in a separate folder where she forgot to ever look at it again. She needed a scapegoat for the garbage job she was doing because the company promoted her over the more competent and knowledgeable contractors in India who policy forbade promotion into managerial roles. Shortly after I left and emailed a long itemized list of receipts to her direct manager, she was promoted to another area of the company. Story 58. I once had to fire a guy right after Christmas because he gifted me, I was his manager's manager, an adult keyboard, I am woman, and gifted a knife with a note that said something like, "For those moments you want to stab me," to his direct report, also a woman. He did not understand why he was being fired. Story 59. Fast food job forever ago. I was asked to stay late and I asked how late because I had plans in a few hours. He went ballistic that I didn't just do it. Walked out, fired. Story 60. Was working normal East Coast hours, but took a new position with the company that was also East Coast hours, but would need some support for West Coast hours until another person was hired. 2 for this role, me being 1. Cool, no worries. I can do that. Few weeks in and nobody was hired for my old role, so I'm stuck doing that still, apparently not even posted. And my manager says something about me being the West Coast hours person now, and they are trying to hire for Easy Coast hours with the second person. I told them no. I took the job only because it was the same hours as before, and they still haven't even posted my old role, which I'm consistently 3+ hours behind on every day because I'm starting later. A month later, without any other communication, I have a Zoom meeting with my old manager, who was effectively promoted above my new manager. And they had an HR rep in there as well, telling me I was fired. Duck that company. Story 61. My son was in 8th grade about 15 years ago, wanted to dye his hair beach blonde. He asked if I would do it with him. So I did and was let go with him in 3 days. Very old lady owner didn't like it and let me go because of it. Story 62. Working in a BBQ restaurant, I saw multiple, primarily male, good members of staff fired on pretenses or pushed to quit because one of the management, mainly men, didn't like them personally. I noticed a trend. If a guy was too attractive, the older chefs would take against them instantly. Story 63. I will preface this by saying I did not work there at the time this happened, but heard it from people who were present at the time. I worked at an amusement park as a technician. I was told that there is a rule that states you cannot drive the tumbler off park property. For those who are curious, the tumbler is the name of the Christian Bale Batmobile from the Dark Knight movie. Apparently, someone had driven the tumbler off park property and went through a drive-thru to grab lunch. Not sure if the drive-thru part is true, but I do know that the tumbler was driven off park property for some reason or another. The guy was fired for this, but argued that there is no rule that says he can't drive the tumbler off park property. He wins this argument, gets his job back, and the rule is added that you can't drive that vehicle off park property. From what I heard, he lasted another month or so before something else got him in hot water, and he got fired again. I no longer work at this amusement park, but I worked there for almost 9 years. The dumb crap I've seen while I worked there makes me have little doubt that the story I was told about why driving the tumbler off park property as a rule is, at least partially, true. Story 64. In my teens, I worked in a warehouse that primarily hired temp workers getting back on their feet after mostly rehab or jail, which I respect a hell of a lot. And I met some truly extraordinary people, and also a few wild ones. The guy who slurred, "I think something is burning," and it's because he was so high, he errantly put his hand in a vat of hot glue and barely reacted when he pulled it out completely degloved. The many dudes I helped pry off the shift manager, nice lady in her 50s, because they needed to fight someone. The good half dozen plus ODs found in the bathroom or in their cars. I think they all survived because medics, quick response, and basic first aid saves lives. The guy who always wore headphones loved Bach and always swore he was listening to Bach, who ran the forklift into the pallet racks and almost killed some folks after he fell asleep at the wheel. His headphones were still on, and it turns out he just listened to the static between the FM channels. Honestly, kind of badass, except the blackout drunk at work part, and also he really did love Bach. I got promoted to forklift driver after that. Boss gave me a thumb drive, labeled forklift certification, that I immediately lost. But it was nice to have a lift for my car after hours, and allegedly some of my friends got silly drunk forklift rides out of the gig. My 6 feet 5 inches, extremely even-tempered brother also worked there, and it took until I was in my mid-20s to realize that his job was basically damage control, lemma forcibly, but gently take you back to rehab/ER/jail duty. Story 65. I worked as a videographer and editor for a university a few years ago. When the pandemic hit, we did work from home for about a year. When return to office became mandatory, there was a rule that if you tested positive for COVID, you could not go to campus for any reason, the only exception being to get a COVID test, which the university provided. The test results would go to us and our bosses, so there was no confusion or doubt on validity. Well, I eventually got COVID, and it hit hard for the first couple weeks. After that, the symptoms went away, but I was still testing positive. 2 more weeks went by. I got tested twice a week, no symptoms anymore, but still positive. After the first 2 weeks, I ran out of sick time and PTO. I begged them to let me work from home. I can edit videos all day, no problem, but boss refused. Return to office is mandatory, she said. After 4 weeks of being away from work, I finally get a negative test, and I was back at work the next day. I was literally happy to be back. Did the whole day, and then 30 minutes from end of work, my boss calls me in and says, "I'm fired." Would not give a reason. I had never ever gotten any kind of reprimand or warning for anything the entire time I worked there, not even any passing comments. It sucked because aside from the boss, I really liked that job and the people I worked with. Story 66. I got fired when I was a kid working at KFC. It was slow and we were bored, and idiot me got the idea to see how big of an order you could bring up on the cash register before it would stop. So we were plugging in chicken buckets and had it up into the thousands of dollars, and a customer walked in. Well, stupid me, I didn't want to go through and delete all these chicken buckets on the orders so that I could use the till, so I just voided the transaction and started a new one. Well, the owner became convinced that somebody had actually come in and ordered hundreds of chicken buckets and fired me because he thought that I voided the transaction and kept the money. So I was stupid. He was stupid. The whole thing was stupid. Story 67. A guy started with us. Not a bad worker, but a bit strained. Was very untidy. On a Friday evening, his manager told him to clean his desk. He did this and went home. He must have thought clean your desk meant he was fired as he started messaging his manager, asking why he'd been let go. Manager, realizing the guy had been drinking, said to stop messaging him, and he could talk on Monday morning. He didn't check any more messages, but woke up in the morning to a load of messages saying mad stuff like the reason he'd been fired was we'd found out he'd hit his supervisor in his previous job, and he smoked weed all the time. We'd known nothing about that, but we had no choice but to fire him after he had said it. Story 68. A friend of mine changed wallpaper on his boss's computer. It used to be FC Barcelona, and he made it Real Madrid. But the rational reason was that you are not allowed to touch my computer. He did as a joke. That went very bad. Story 69. It was me. Made the mistake of being the guy my boss's girlfriend cheated with. All pretty low-key until they got in a fight, and she told him I was younger, taller, better looking, and had a bigger junk. So, fired. Story 70. I gave a fountain raspberry iced tea to the dishwasher and got fired. 1 year later, found out the idiot that fired me got caught cheating on his wife with a man. Story 71. It was me. I got fired. I got fired for going on maternity leave. I went on scheduled maternity leave starting on a Friday, 2 weeks before my due date. That day, around 11 a.m., I drove into the office, grabbed some personal stuff from my desk, things like a plant that needed regular watering, a pair of flats I wanted to take home, nothing major. Said I'd see everyone in 6 weeks. HR director told me good luck and send pics of the baby. The following Monday, I get a FedEx letter basically saying, "We know your scheduled maternity leave started on Friday, but we're firing you as of today," which was that Monday. They'd sent late on Friday, possibly even while I was still walking around telling my friends that I'd see them soon when I came back or shaking hands with the HR director. The part that stuck out was the HR rep wrote in their letter, "Big Corp's termination of your employment supersedes your scheduled maternity leave." Like, they whole ass wrote that sentence in a letter that they FedExes to me. Their stated reason for firing me was due to performance, despite getting a good performance review 2 months before. Not only did I get a good review, but I got a merit bonus and a small raise too. I took this to the CA Department of Labor thinking it was a slam dunk. No, my CADOL rep basically went and said, "You can try suing them if you want, but they're a big corporation and you'll probably lose. There's nothing we can do. Sorry about that." Big Corp didn't fight my unemployment claim, which I found interesting. My role was not eliminated, and there were no layoffs. They already had a job ad for my replacement in the newspaper. It was a while ago. Within a few days of my firing. I guess they felt * more guilty about firing a pregnant woman still at her job than a pregnant woman on maternity leave from said job? I'll never know. This was back in 1998, and I went on to stay home for 20 years to raise a bunch of kids before I ultimately rejoined the workforce. So it all worked out for me, but still, it's not like me being pregnant or going on scheduled maternity leave was any kind of surprise. The leave date had been set for a few months before I actually, went on maternity leave as planned. Also, since they were bought out, duck you, Robinson's May Company. That was a crafty thing to do. Story 72. Used to work at a machine shop that was heavily unionized. After being fully trained on my machine, I was positive someone was messing with it when I went to break and lunch, and it would take me anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to get everything perfectly aligned again. It was an old machine, so it took a couple days for me to decide to set up a camera to catch the person. It was the manager's son that wanted to work that machine. He would mess with the metal feeder speed, jostle my die out of position, loosen locking bolts so things would move, but the worst was adjusting my safety light screen. I caught him on camera, went to HR with a union rep, and was fired for recording on the floor. The rep and I were flabbergasted, especially when they told me to delete the video, which I did since I already sent it to the rep and left. 2 days later, I got a call from my union saying I had my job back with back pay, and that the manager, his son, and mistress were all fired to avoid the union calling in their lawyers for the wrongful termination. Moral of the story, always join the union, and keep your evidence backed up. Story 73. Imagine, if you will, a large organization that is unable to effectively manage their IT assets. Well, an employee was on vacation with their work-issued MacBook. Their hotel was broken into, and the laptop was stolen. The end user shared the details with the proper people, who asked IT if the laptop was encrypted. According to our records, there was no laptop by that name that had verified its encryption status. So we said that it was not encrypted. This created a whole kerfuffle, and the technician who deployed the laptop was fired. Much later, the laptop was recovered, and as it turns out, the workstation name the employee provided initially was incorrect. The laptop was indeed encrypted. The lost laptop was always encrypted. They had just shared the incorrect host name with the help desk, who was unable to validate the encryption status of the incorrect device. The technician was let go, and even after discovering the error, was not rehired. Story 74. I once worked with a black guy who was in his 40s. He started around the same time as a few white guys in their 20s. The infamous N-word conversation came up, and he genuinely didn't care if they called him that, which they did. Anyway, on a particular day, one of the younger guys called him that while an engineer who was a known troublemaker overheard. So naturally, he told the bigger bosses about it. An official investigation was started, and they pull the people in one by one to sort it out. Black guy realizes the seriousness and straight up lies, "Nope, they don't call me that. I've never heard them say that." White guy is, for lack of a better word, a dumbass one for calling him that, and two for telling the truth. "Yes, boss, I did call him that. It was a joke." So the bosses say they have no option but to fire the black guy for lying during an official investigation. Story 75. We hired a guy who was very unproductive and kept taking super long bathroom breaks. He sat in the corner and was always fixated on his screen. Finally, we got suspicious, so started monitoring his web traffic. Turns out he was watching adult film all day long, then taking a super long bathroom break to relieve himself, I guess. Then back to adult film. We pulled him into the office and said, "Look, we're all adults here. We don't care what you do at home, but knock it off at work. For a week, he was suddenly very productive. Then productivity went down, and yep, he's back to watching adult film. Then he was fired. Story 76. During a training, I was warned about another employee being fired for a photo found on social media of her in a bathing suit holding a beer on vacation on a beach. We were told it violated a moral clause, and they had to fire and remove the individual based on the request of the school she worked at for wearing a bikini and drinking a beer on vacation on the island. Story 77. 20 years ago, a handsome guy was a new hire on a call center. A couple weeks in, he was dating this super hot girl. The thing is, basically everyone was hitting on her, but she was like a brick wall. Supervisors, fellow CC agents, etc. A jealous supervisor started to secretly fill fake bad reports to HR until one day he was called and fired. So petty if you ask. Story 78. I got fired for trying to negotiate an extra $7,000 per year in salary for a promotion I was offered. My work delivered record-breaking revenue performance for 3 years in a row. They told me when they fired me that, A, I can pretty much do your job now anyway, so you should have known your place and just been grateful for what we offered you. Story 79. I live in a right-to-work state, meaning you can be fired for no reason. I witnessed somebody be fired after a decade plus of working with them because their partner did substances and got arrested for possession. Literally, your partner got arrested for substances, you're fired. Story 80. A guy working at the local TV station in western Nebraska was watching an adult tape and accidentally switched it over the air during Saturday morning cartoon. Story 81. GM wanted a TV replaced ASAP. Co-worker didn't do it fast enough. Next thing I know, I'm the only one in the department. Our department manager had departed for another job. No replacement had been hired yet. I had to call the dude that just got fired because I had no idea how to run a few things. He was nice enough to help me, but had he not, I would have had to hunt down my old boss. Before I left that job, I gave my 2 weeks. I spent a few days writing up SOPs and documentation so the next poor sucker to hold my position would know what they were doing. Then I took the rest of my 2 weeks as vacation. I hope the next dude is getting paid more than I did for what I did at that place, because if they are getting paid the same as I did, they are very underpaid, because that place is full of cheapskates. Story 82. A fiend worked at a supermarket. He was a quiet kid that didn't know a lot of people in the store, so he mostly kept to himself. During his lunch break, he would read through magazines and always put them back. One day, he was pulled into loss prevention. They had him on video ripping out a page from a Maxim magazine and bringing it to the bathroom. Everyone laughed that he was a pervert and got caught. Turns out, there was a survey on the back of the page that could win concert tickets. He honestly had no idea the other side was a girl in a bikini. Story 83. Didn't witness it, but many years ago, when I was a delivery driver at Papa John's, our area manager stopped into one of the stores in her AOR to check on a new key holder's first solo shift. This was after 10 p.m. Store was open for delivery, but closed for carryout, and no one answered when she knocked. So she unlocked the store and could find no one until she went in the walk-in and found her husband, the area manager of the next district, boning the key holder. So both the key holder and her husband were fired, and she also got a divorce. Story 84. Me. Working IT before it was called that. We had some old equipment and some new equipment. The old equipment ran one internet protocol, the new equipment ran a different internet protocol. Big Boss didn't like the fact we had two networks and wanted them joined together. I told him that they won't talk to each other, and if you direct connect them, the whole network will crash. He said, do it anyway, network crashed. We were down for 2 days. At the end of the month, I was riffed. Story 85. Receptionist at an engineering firm needed time off because her sister suddenly died. She and the boss's wife were Facebook friends, and we all found out that her sister didn't die, but they had a good time in Fiji for 10 days thanks to her posting daily. Then she rocked up on Monday, still in mourning, till the boss took her into the office and showed her the Facebook post. She even tried to sue for unfair dismissal, but that went nowhere. Story 86. Mine is person stealing iced tea. When the cafeteria was closed, they took a 1.79 bottle of tea. Security cameras caught it. He was fired within a week for a ducking iced tea. He made about $100,000 a year. He will be barred from the industry going forward. No one will hire him. It's sad as crap. Story 87. Our HR guy harassed our manager. Looked up her phone number to call her. One of the hotel's maintenance guys had a guest walk into her room to find him pleasure himself on the bed. Story 88. I once had to fire a 74-year-old assistant because she sent her boss a text message with a photo of her diarrhea as proof for why she was calling out sick. Story 89. Heard of a rehabilitation therapist at a place I knew people at that was fired because for months she was completing billable notes for patients in her office on the facility campus. Except they discovered after a while she was just sitting in her office and not seeing any patients, just billing. I agree she had to be fired. What makes it ridiculous is that She was salaried, so there was no financial gain or reason to document/bill sessions that never occurred. And like most of these places, you could expect that at least 1 to 2 slots a day would be unfilled or not be a session, so salaried people could be doing whatever in their office, no issue. But this person was billing something like 25 to 30 services a week that never occurred for months, I was told. What makes them crafty is this place was specifically for patients with brain injuries and other cognitive disabilities. So it took a while for anyone to believe the few that said they never saw this therapist. They just assumed the patient forgot or was confused. Apparently, she did get charged with fraud and went to jail, as well as had wages clawed back because, well, in those settings too, it's a lot of Medicare and federal funds. Story 90. I worked for a small biomedical support company, and one day we were in a meeting with about 6 of us. The boss was talking when one of the field service techs blurted out something like, "Oh, she's so ducking hot," then got up from the table and ran out the front door of the restaurant and stared down the sidewalk. Apparently, he saw some woman who he thought was attractive walk by, and this was his reaction. He came back in rambling about her like we were all his frat bros anxiously waiting to hear his description of her. In retrospect, I think he was maybe high on Met. I've never seen someone so quickly fired on the spot before. Story 91. I had to fire someone because they confessed to me that they were stalking another employee at the company. I would have had no clue. As a boss, I am literally designated as a mandatory reporter. As in, I could have been fired for not reporting the stalking to HR. Story 92. I live in an at-will employment state. As long as management says your services are no longer required and never say anything else other than that and not leave a paper trail saying otherwise, they can fire you for looking at them wrong. Story 93. My old employer tried to fire me for having too many hospital appointments and because I was actually admitted to hospital twice in the same year. Unfortunately for them, the appointments and hospital stays were to treat my connective tissue disorder. That counts as a disability that they had hired me 4 years earlier, fully aware I had it because I was honest with them about it. They were banking on me not knowing my rights, and they lost that gamble and ended up giving me a substantial payout to prevent me from taking them to court for unlawful dismissal. They also had to pay for my solicitor, whom I got involved immediately. There were some squeaky for sure. When, during that initial meeting, they tried to sack me in, I casually mentioned the Equality Act of 2010 and how they had just broken it. There was backpedaling, but by then I was already looking for another job anyway after being made to do the job of 3 people through the whole pandemic with not even a thank you. And I knew they did the same thing to another colleague who was diagnosed with epilepsy a year earlier. In total, they lost about $12,000 on that maneuver. The funniest thing about it was they had me work a notice period while everything got sorted out with the solicitors. So I did nothing for 2 weeks and still got a full month's pay on top of the payout. The day I left, my old boss couldn't look me in the eye. They hired 3 people to replace me. I walked right out of there and 48 hours later into my new job, which I did a phone interview for and got hired for S8 at my desk during that notice period. I've been at that job for almost 4 years now and have had nothing but support from management despite my health being a raging dumpster fire. It showed me the difference between a toxic workplace and one with understanding that I might have a slightly higher absence rate and have hospital appointments regularly. I even had surgery last year that put me out of action for 6 weeks, but I still work ducking hard, and if I may toot my own horn, I'm ducking good at what I do. Story 94. I worked with a partner or organization for a while. Someone who had not long started had their probation extended for lack of feedback. They were then let go because asking for feedback was inappropriate. The person responsible had not long been promoted. I was myself told I was not welcome back in the office for sympathizing with a new hire who was confused by her emailing on her day off, then responding with, "Don't email me on my day off," when he replied, and trying to tell him it wasn't his fault. 3 people were fired not long after for slagging her off in a group chat on WhatsApp. How it was found out, nobody knows. They were supporting each other through her absolutely insane management from what I've heard. 2 other long-term members of staff left as a result of everything that happened. I had replaced a guy from my organization who went to work directly for them. The day she was promoted, he applied to come back to our company. This happened within 7 months of her being promoted. The team had 6 people in it to start with. Maximum staffing was probably 9 people in all that time. 8 staff members lost in a few months, and the person whose job she got, who became upper management, were still defending their hiring choice. Heard later, she went off long-term sick and verbally abused the person who had defended her for so long. Ironically, got fired for it. My company no longer has anything to do with them, and they had to rebrand recently. Story 95. I don't have a specific scenario about this guy, but I worked with a dude just not cut out for a professional environment at all. I got my start in IT working part-time at a K-12 school I worked with a dude in his 40s who had never had a W-2 job before. He inherited property when he turned 18, became a landlord and small business owner, got sued by a tenant and gave up landlording in his 40s, hated the busy work of the floral business he inherited from his mom, decided to get into help desk IT as a start. Dude was in HR or a one-to-one with our boss literally every other week because he couldn't keep his mouth shut or work his own hours. He did care about the kids and teachers, I'll give him that, but he had a 5.5-hour shift and was pulling 12-hour days with no approval. Or he was trash-talking administration to other admin. Or he was saying some conspiracy theory COVID rant. Or something just plain rude to a female coworker. I think his 11th or 12th HR meeting, he was positive he was getting fired, and our boss had it out for him, and he quit before they could fire him. My boss later told me he was right and he was going to get fired in that meeting. Story 96. I used to work for a very large national musical instrument retailer. It was staffed almost entirely by 20 to 30-year-old musicians who weren't always exactly paragons of professionalism. There was a lot of grab ass and screwing around in the back of the house. One night, after we had closed up, one of the assistant managers pulled a batwing on one of the other employees. The general response at the time was a mix of shock and amusement, but not a trace of true offense on anyone's part. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread to the store manager, though, and he was forced to reluctantly fire the batwinger. The manager made it clear he didn't really want to fire the perpetrator. But we worked for a corporation, and if you show your ball sack to a coworker, he's not going to have a choice but to let you go. Story 97. I deserved it, I guess, but all these years later, I still can't believe that it happened. I was fired because I missed the last page, which was blank except for the total, of an order that I was supposed to staple together and take to our shipping department. After I left, they noticed the order was missing a page, so they held it over for the weekend. The client, one of our biggest accounts, found out, got very angry, and threatened to take their business elsewhere. I was called into a meeting and let go. I was so shocked. The rest of the day felt like an out-of-body experience. Later, I found out that my work bestie/coworker, who was also friends with the boss, had been complaining that she missed her old job, which is what I was hired to do, and after I was fired, she replaced me. Story 98. Worked for Starbucks. One of the morning supervisors was leaving with her 3-year-old daughter once she was off duty. You can take a free food item home with you at the end of your shift. The supervisor took home a birthday cake pop and planned on giving it to her daughter. Apparently, there is a policy that states that any free food item you mark out by the end of your shift belongs to you and only you. We had an assistant manager from a different store training at our store, and he noticed that the supervisor handed her daughter the cake pop after she walked out, the store. The training ASM reported it to our store manager, and in about 2 days, she was terminated, and it's for distributing free food mark out to customers. That made the training ASM despised by many at our store. Story 99. Night shift electrician who was a real creep kept getting arrested for violating a restraining order from his ex-girlfriend. Kept saying something along the lines of, "The cameras in the marketplace aren't hooked up to anything. I checked in the ceiling and they don't work. You can just take whatever you want." He was fired for stealing on multiple occasions from the marketplace when the vendor that runs it turned in all the footage of him stealing. Story 100. I did see a well-liked worker fired for failing a random substances test. A month after his termination, the company announced they wouldn't do random substances tests anymore. I felt bad for the guy. A guy got fired once for not reporting dirty material. He didn't watch adult film. He allegedly walked past a coworker who was watching adult film. He was attempting to form a union, so they created that excuse to fire him. Story 101. I got fired as a line cook for not doing the assistant manager's night paperwork after closing while he left the restaurant to go buy substances for him and the head waitress. The manager was like, "I have to take his word for it." And I was like, I'm a sponge for hours. Why would I have just left if it wasn't bullcrap? But whatever. Had a job a couple hours later at the grocery store next door. Story 102. I was hired to answer phones, but day one I was told not to answer phones until I get trained on the computer system. A month later, my boss asked how the phones were going. I said I hadn't answered any yet because he told me not to. He said, "Since you haven't answered any calls in a month, today is your last day." Whatever. Company sucked anyway. Story 103. Trailer driver took a crap in his cab, spread a lot of it around the cab, bagged some up, put it in a bin in the warehouse on his way out. Stunk the entire place out. No one knew what the smell was until they discovered the cab covered in crap. Was all on cab CCTV and warehouse CCTV. Only found the warehouse crap after tracing him through CCTV. Story 104. I was fired for not wanting to work on my day off. 5 days of moving heavy-ass furniture up into second-floor apartments, taking everything apart to get it through narrow doors, dealing with customers grinning about a stitch that wasn't straight. Duck, no, I'm not working on my day off. Story 105. My mate brought a karaoke machine into the office and my boss walked in on me singing, "Never Going to Give You Up," whilst dancing on a desk, and he just said, "Duck this crap," and fired us all. Story 106. A friend got fired for talking about a computer game because they thought he was going to shoot up the store when he was talking about something like Call of Duty. Story 107. When I worked for a security company, we had hired a new guy that had been doing security for the local community college, but left for a better pay. The guy was a 55-year-old Navy vet that was driving to work every day from his home that was 35 minutes away. One morning, about 2 weeks into working for us, he gets into a wreck on his way to work. Yet he still showed up ready to go. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't afford another vehicle right away. He was having to drive a POS Honda scooter from home. It would now take him almost 2 hours to get to work. Still, he wouldn't let it get him down. He bought a helmet and joked with everyone that he loved riding around on his hog. One morning, we're hit with a terrible ice storm, with everything covered in ice and a dusting of snow on top of it. Navy guy was barely 3 minutes late and arrived with literal icicles hanging from his nose. Our boss comes down from office and pulls my supervisor aside, tells him that he wants Navy guy fired immediately. When my supervisor asked why, he was told, "Because I can't risk him being late every day if he's going to continue riding that stupid scooter." When my supervisor reluctantly fired Navy guy in front of all of us, Navy guy cried, said he didn't know what he did wrong, and left. He disappeared on his hog into the ice storm to have what I could only assume to be the longest scooter ride home ever. I hated my boss. Employers and managers who had to fire someone on their first day. What happened? Story 1. My coworker told a BS lie to our boss, and he just wrote me up without even speaking to me. When I did speak with him, he didn't even care to listen and told me to use it as a learning experience. Then it happened again a couple months later, and I didn't show up the next day. So glad I'm not working there anymore. I kind of hate that my coworker won, but at the end of the day, I don't like drama at work. I just want to do my work and go home. Story 2. When I worked urgent care, we had a new hire who was a brand new nurse. They had just received their nursing license, and this was their first job. On their first day of work, the nurse training them ducked up and they ended up giving a vaccine to the wrong patient. Even though the mistake was caused by the training nurse, the new nurse is the one who gave the vaccine, so they are ultimately and legally at fault. The new nurse was immediately terminated and the medication error was reported to the nursing board. That placed an infraction on the new nurse's license, which prevents places from hiring them. Their career basically ended before it even began because of another nurse's carelessness. Story 3. That blows. I got pushed out of a job I had for 5 years because a newer employee decided they didn't like me and complained about me every day, even on days I wasn't there. I tried to ask upper management/HR to be present on the floor while we were on shift together so they can see the complaints were wildly exaggerated and some of them just not true. Would think they would at least investigate since the other 20+ employees had no issues. Was pretty much told no and I needed to figure it out or they would fire me. Ended up just letting that employee do whatever they wanted while looking for a new job so I could leave on good terms. Anyway, they are now doing really bad financially, and I have a great new job with a baller company. Story 4. Strange people work in warehouses. I also hate that some of the women say they can't do parts of the job because they're women. Why work in a warehouse then? Also, that conveniently ignores all the women working there who have no issue doing the same type of thing. Story 5. I worked in a government job and got sent to a unit where I was not liked from the beginning, and I won't get into the details, but let's just say it was cultural. When my last day came and I could retire, I literally unloaded my desk in about an hour and said, "Okay, well, I'm out here beating the traffic today." They were like, "Where y'all think you're going?" And I said, "I'm going home. I'm retired." And they said, "Who told you that you could retire?" I said, 35 years told me I could retire. They said, "Well, why didn't you tell us?" I said, "It shouldn't make any difference to you that I'm gone now. Tomorrow morning, I'll be watching The View on the couch while y'all are still here for the next 15 years. Bye." I swear, it was like winning the lottery. I put up with their crap for 8 years and it never got any better. They were always mean, and when it would start to get a little better, some other bad at rude would destroy the harmony. Story 6. I got fired from a temp job because I disagreed with a lady from another staffing company, and the plant manager had a soft spot for women called a threat in a suit, and they called me and told me I couldn't sue them. I just hung up on me. Story 7. Oh, I had just moved to a new town. No one knew me from Adam. I start work at a new facility and do the first 3 days no problem. They tell me that I have to do a grave shift just to see how it runs. No problem. I get paired with a young lady, thought she was Beyonce. All the guys thought she was the crap. It's homegirls last night there. Got a big promotion and was out there. The guys on the shift are basically throwing her a little goodbye party. Cool, I know no one, so I keep myself busy. I'm reading the shift duties and I'm noticing nothing's getting done. I ask her about it and she tells me, day shift will do it. I do all the stuff I can figure out how to do. Started cleaning just to get crap done. Next day, I get a call from the direct supervisor asking me why nothing got done and telling me the night shift Beyonce said I didn't want to do anything. I told him 10 minutes, and I drove to the facility and went to talk to the supervisor. I asked him to call her and the other dudes to do a conference call so we could go over the shift and where things went wrong. The supervisor was stunned that I was in his office going so hard, but I told him I don't get blamed for stuff I didn't do. I told him everyone was all gay over her, but I'm here to work. He took it all in and then called one of the guys and got the scoop. I was there for 5 years and he always knew I wasn't going to play games like that. Story 8. I once made a joke after I got a job at a call center through an agency. Something like, get a degree, they said, when my academic background check was holding up my start date, and the HR lady removed me from the system and claimed I said I was no longer interested. I hated working with an agency. You're somehow treated as even more expendable. Story 9. Take it as a good sign you're not meant for that place. This was the best learning day of your life. Don't get involved in meth factory jobs. The people are criminals. Story 10. I used to work for a staffing agency long ago. There was a site unloading shipping containers, and they were paying $15 per hour. AUD early 2000. We get there, it's an 8-hour day, 4 containers to unload, and there's 8 of us. 4 on each container, and it's summer and outside. 32 degrees Celsius day, sweating our ass off. We get to like 6 hours in and we've done 2.5 containers because one had shifted in transport. We then found out that we were getting paid $30 per container and we couldn't leave until they were all done. We all stopped work and I spent 30 minutes on the phone to the staffing agency about being lied to about the pay rate, and we were all going to walk from the site. The staffing agency ended up honoring the $15 per hour, and 2 of the team stayed back after the 8 hours to finish unloading the last container. All 8 of us got blacklisted from the site by the client. I then found out from the staffing company that almost everyone gets blacklisted because the company was always pulling stunts like that. 1 month later, I got a call to go work there again, and I was like, aren't I blacklisted from there? And the staffing agency goes, they blacklisted all our employees so nobody could work there. So the client unblacklisted everyone. Everyone that they called put themselves back on the blacklist, and the client had to find a new staffing agency. They went through 4 different agencies before the parent company did an undercover boss audit and ended up cleaning house because of how management was treating the temps and not doing any work that they were supposed to be doing. Story 11. Duck all ducking staffing/temp agencies and agents. I've been there so many times. Finished my shift, felt pretty good about the day, and I'm walking to the bus stop in the Miami heat when I get a call from my recruiter telling me my contract with that warehouse is over. I asked why, and she said, because I sweat so much when I'm working physical labor, so they just assumed I was on dope and fired me. I was making $12 an hour at that warehouse in Minami Gardens, and that recruiter probably had negotiated 18 to 21-ish dollars an hour, and he is keeping the rest like a leech, paying you crap while you work, breaking your ducking back in a warehouse. 10 hours a day, we no AC and crap ventilation. Temp and staffing agencies are nothing but middlemen that make money off of you working, money that should go to you. They are the prime example of modern capitalism and society that shouldn't exist in the first place. Story 12. Redneck ladies often get a weird tick in their heads when they just hate somebody. They fixate on it and will never let it go. You will see them just fixate on a new person until they are gone. Then they immediately find another target. There absolutely has to be a nemesis for them. They cannot comprehend their lives sucking on their own. Story 13. She was told that I had said I had 2 blown out knees and I didn't want to work yet. Because that's definitely something that a new hire who just swept a warehouse would say. Story 14. The moment you tell any employer you have any back-related issue, then they will drop you the first excuse they get. And trying to find a job with a back issue? Good luck. If you already have the job, the moment someone starts acting like your back thing is an excuse, go to HR before they can on break and tell them, I have a medical condition that I feel I'm being discriminated against. I want to document the complaint in case there is any legal dispute because I deserve fair treatment just like everyone else. If they ask for specifics, just say, I have received comments that were dismissive of my physical limitation. I want to document the issue because if I am reprimanded, penalized, or terminated due to my federally protected status, I will have no other option but to speak with the DLWHD. If your company is needing documentation, I would be glad to provide it upon request, but I cannot tolerate future comments or attacks on my character due to a medical condition which I have no control over. That will shut them up real quick, and they'll know you won't roll over and that any termination resulting from an interaction from your condition will result in legal action and Department of Labor investigation, as well as the Office of the Inspector General if you like. Story 15. I was fired 1 hour into my temp assignment in the mid-2000s because the client failed to tell the agency that the assignment involved talking on the phone, and I don't talk on the phone at all. The client went out of business less than a month later. Karma. Story 16. Literally had this earlier this week. Hired as a driver. They had 1 hour of driving planned for the whole 8-hour day. After that, I'm walking about the warehouse with nothing to do. Ask the boss if I can go early since duck all is happening. He says yes, then calls the agency and cancels me, saying I left early. It's okay. A place run that poorly is sure to go under soon. Story 17. Loving the whole right to work thing. Mary, why are you so slow on your first time doing this? Well, it's my first time doing this and I have an actual disability, but I'm doing my best. Mary, screw the ADA. Next. Seriously, I get that the staffing agency's situation protects them from most recourse, but that's about as blatant a case of discrimination because of a disability that we could have. Story 18. I went the temp agency route for a while, and it was the worst string of jobs I've ever endured. There is a reason some companies use staffing agencies to fill jobs. It is because those positions are difficult to keep filled, often because the working conditions suck. The placement agency is also likely being paid better than twice what you are for your suffering. Do yourself a favor and do your own job hunting. Story 19. The same exact thing happened to me. I worked one day through a staffing agency, and when I showed up to the job, it was a completely different job than what I agreed to, one that no one else would want to work. I still did the work and asked one of the workers if they thought I could ever do the actual job, to which they had me transferred to where I was originally supposed to be. After I went home, I got a call from my agency saying the place asked that I don't return again because I was apparently refusing to do work. I went right back there and went off on everyone, demanding the manager come out and face me and tell me why they lied to my agency. They never came out their office, and I almost had the police called on me, so I left, but not before sticking my gum under their front door handle. Story 20. It was just some lazy-ass guy afraid I was going to take his job from him. Just realized that the temp agency will 9 out of 10 side with the employer. I did the temp thing for almost 2 years and found a good job on my own. Story 21. I got fired before I even started my first day at an internship once. I showed up early and was in my car stuffing my face with a breakfast sandwich when a guy tapped on my window to ask me something. I gestured with my hand 1 second because I didn't want to be rude and spit food out while answering him. He took off immediately, and 5 minutes later when I walked in to introduce myself to the boss, he fired me for being rude to a customer. Story 22. I went through a staffing agency and found a job that seemed pretty decent. Got all the details about the dress code and schedule and pretty excited. I show up 15 minutes prior, thanks Army, and I walk in with an open mind and a willingness to learn. Get into the office and fill out some paperwork while the ladies in there chat with me. Meet the owner. He was cool, but busy seeing as he's always on the phone. So far, all around great environment. Get out to the floor with one of the office ladies, and after the pleasantries, she basically tells me, since it's super slow in the mornings, to just look busy. So she recommended that I sweep the warehouse. Too easy. Sweep half the warehouse and get tasked out to do another task. Normally, I'd ask if I could finish the first task before I start something else, but no biggie. The guy I got paired up with told me people freak out if this task isn't done a certain way. He proceeds to show me the way to do it, and I take over. Here's where the fun begins. I'm 99% done, and the office lady brings someone over to me saying that I'd be paired with her. I thought, aight, cool. Now, I'm not a judgmental person, but this woman has all the past looks of methamphetamine. So she asks me what I'm doing and says that I'm not doing it right and tells me to undo the whole thing. Then proceeds to ask if I was sweeping. I replied yes. She goes off on a rant that that's not where the broom goes and people don't put things where they belong. And she spots my small pile of dust/dirt and trash and yells at me that we're not allowed to leave a pile sitting in the warehouse. Keep in mind that I forgot all about it. It was out of the way and I wasn't going to let it sit there. She made a remark that I'm a strong young man, and I can lift blah blah blah, and she can't because she's a female. Let that one slide, then started a task building boxes and placing items in them and taping them up and stacking them on a pallet. She tells me 2 of the other guys in the warehouse can do this super quick. I just gave a O-type nod. She starts asking why I'm slow. I politely explain to her that I have a leg that's shorter than the other and a bad back. She then starts insinuating that I was raised spoiled and that I'm lazy. I was confused because it's my first day and I haven't done something like this before. First break starts and I ask the office ladies if they can talk to her, as she's been rude and expecting me to be lightning fast on my first day. After the break, I don't see her for the next 2 hours. Lunchtime comes around and the woman tries to get me out of the warehouse quickly, and I run to the gas station to grab a snack and a Red Bull. It's at this moment I get a call from the lady at the staffing agency telling me that I can go home. When I asked why she told me she's gotten complaints about me, I was dumbfounded and asked what the complaints were. She was told that I had said I had 2 blown out knees and I didn't want to work. I was absolutely furious and confused why this lady had gone out of her way to get me fired. Oh, the reason why she was gone for 2 hours is because she was filing complaints story 23. Every staffing agency job I've ever had was low paying, and usually for some startup or coked out bro douche running a shipping freight warehouse. It's always a crap show. Story 24. She made a remark that I'm a strong young man and I can lift blah blah blah, and she can't because she's a female. Story 25. My contract wasn't renewed even though several people told me I was the best employee because someone else stole all my rent money from my wallet. It turned out the locks on the lockers were just decorative. Story 26. I didn't see it, but he was a legend at my retail job in college. This guy took the job specifically to ask one particular cashier out on a date. He did. They slept together in his car during his lunch break, and he just left. No one ever saw him again. Story 27. I had something like this happen, but I just kept making snide remarks after every insult. You're working too slow. While I actually wasn't, I'd respond with, here, you do it faster then. It's my first day, but I'd love to see how fast someone with years of experience works. I had a shift lead pestering me. An entire shift, keep in mind, making me and another coworker do his work. I eventually snapped and yelled at him to take over and do his damn job. He never talked to me again after that. I may be an ass, but I will never allow someone to belittle me. Even the damn CEO. I will drag up and leave a shop so quick I don't put up with that crap. Mainly because I have extreme anxiety and I cannot physically handle hostile work environment, or my entire home life gets wrecked. Story 28. That's got a lot to do with the staffing agency. This scam that they came up with some 20 years ago is one of my major pet peeves. It's not just a friggin' money grab, but believe it or not, back in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, we didn't need a ducking bogus stiffing agency. I was bought out in 2008. Although I didn't really need to, I decided to grab another job after 25 years in a steel factory. I got jobs immediately. But after a while, I was introduced to this bullcrap agency crap. I found out that the supervisors were taking cash payoffs if you wanted to stay. This was at a large car seat factory in London, which I will not name names. But after I was informed about this kickback policy, I invited this 27-year-old asshole. If he'd like to meet me in the parking lot, I'd give him my answer. Needless to say, bros, I was canned that very day by the agency who said I was disruptive. After telling the folks downtown who ran this scam, back then it was a brand new money grab scheme, the police were called, and on the way out, the two cops agreed with me and claimed they had not heard of this new scam. Long story short, my friend, I'm in my 60s now so I don't have to knuckle under to this totally unfair, unnecessary cash sting. Story 29. I had a similar experience with a large bank through an agency. I was hired as data entry. Day 1. I'm told they don't have a computer ready and for me to help with mail sorting until they get one. I was a 23 years old male. Mail sorting was, not exaggerating, 5 pregnant women in like an oversized cubicle. I did what they told me, but was mostly useless, and obviously had to ask lots of questions. Days 2 to 4 were identical. Day 5, Friday, first week, I had someone come over and show me to my cubicle. They said I would be expected to do a minimum of 350 entries per day. I did almost 900 that day. After a week of discussing breast pump brands and breathing techniques, I was so excited to do anything else. The next Monday, I get a call at 6 a.m. from the agency telling me not to bother going in as they no longer need me due to me asking too many questions. To this day, I still think they last second tried to cover someone's vacation or something and just screwed out all up. Story 30. Back around 2000 or 2001, I was placed in an office by a staffing agency. I show up my first day and a director tells me I was brought in by her VP and she didn't think I was needed and to just sit at the desk and don't do anything. At the end of the day, the director tells me not to come back. I call the agency and they said they got a call from the VP and there was some internal struggle between the D and VP and I shouldn't go back. I tell them I didn't do anything because I was told not to and they told me not to worry. They know it wasn't me. They did place me at a hospital a little later doing admin work in a lab. That wasn't bad. The other office people were nice and made an attempt to bring me on FT, but they couldn't get the position approved. Story 31. I'd file a charge under ADA, and if it's a service-connected disability, it would be ugly. I know you were a temp, but if that's the why, they had concerns, their first response wouldn't be to fire you. It would be to determine how to accommodate or if there is a reasonable accommodation. I'd contact EEOC and file a charge and wait for some cash from a settlement. I'd explain that you were released after it was found that you had a disability if service-connected asked for double, and file both under ADA and VEVRAA. I know some will say at will, but that doesn't excuse the why you were fired. Story 32. He worked in manufacturing and was told his contract wouldn't be renewed, so he decided to take his anger out on the assembly line equipment. He transferred from, after several months of warning, I was thrown out the door and threatened with property damage charges. Story 33. Many years ago, my former employer in New York State fired a new employee not yet protected by a union for falling asleep after her 24-hour shift. She was ultimately fired not for that, but for not finishing her shift by not folding her laundry. Story 34. My ex-employee was fired because she took a few weeks off. She needed time off because she dislocated her hip. She kept in touch with them, and they knew what had happened. When she called about coming back, they told her they'd hired 3 more salespeople and couldn't afford to keep her, so she was fired. Story 35, me. A woman who was obsessed with dogs tried to intimidate me. We were at a training session. I asked a lot of questions to understand the internal program we would be using. My curiosity irritated her. She threw a pen at me, yelling, "Shut up already!" I just happened to have a cupcake from Costco. I pounced on her, threw it like a ball right in her face, blueberry flavor. It exploded. I was escorted out of the room. Story 36. I used to work for a fairly large sandwich bar chain. I had a shift supervisor who got really sick one morning early. He called the general manager to let him know and stayed home. The next day, he was fired for failure to report without notice because he'd only said he was sick and coughing up blood on the phone, but hadn't specified he wouldn't be coming to work. Story 37. I witnessed the dismissal of a mid-level manager over ridiculous complaints fabricated to get him fired. A new manager came in, and during training before taking over, he coerced 2 or 3 people into fabricating conflicts with him. He promised them a promotion. Ironically, he was fired just a few months later. Story 38. I worked for a large retail chain in the UK. I was cited for gross misconduct, specifically theft. I failed to pay for a bag while shopping after my shift. After the initial investigation, I quickly found a new job because it became clear they were trying to fire me. I showed up for an interview during my lunch break and ended up missing those 30 minutes for an hour. Then, after I handed in my resignation, they launched an investigation for gross misconduct, specifically abusing my break. Story 39. In the early 90s, I was fired from Subway for giving a homeless person a broken piece of bread that was unfit for consumption. Since the bread was counted if it broke or became unfit for consumption, we had to mark it on a sheet and put it in a special box so the manager could see we weren't just marking it and stealing. There was a man at the checkout who was clearly very hungry, and I gave him the broken piece of bread. When the counting revealed an error, the manager questioned me, and I told her the truth. She fired me on the spot. Story 40. I was working as a manager at McDonald's, and one of the managers, fired about 3 months earlier for a fairly minor infraction, was eventually rehired. He'd moved in the meantime, but HR never made him fill out the hiring paperwork or update his address. Because of this, HR sent the employment paperwork to his old address, and the people who lived there called the store in a huff, accusing us of trying to pull some kind of scam. Instead of acknowledging the administrative error, the owner ended up firing the manager again over the situation. I remember him being completely stunned the first time he was fired. The owner at that location had a history of firing people for very dubious reasons, but this whole situation has always stuck in my mind as particularly ridiculous. Story 41. I was also working in a warehouse through a staffing agency. This place was a straight-up prison camp, though. They have everyone go through 2 sets of metal detectors and then make you put your phone, watch, and anything metal in a locker. You weren't allowed to wear anything that had any type of logo on it whatsoever. Didn't matter if it was a small Nike check or some other barely visible logo. Oh, and temps had to wear a solid orange shirt. Mind you, the agency didn't tell me any of this before I agreed to the job. So on my second day, I walk in with my orange shirt and everything and have a solid black hat that has a standard issue American flag patch velcroed on it. That was my father's patch he wore on his uniform. Nobody said anything to me when I went through the metal detectors, and I also spoke with my department supervisor before the pre-shift meeting, and she didn't say anything. Lo and behold, this brand new supervisor they just hired has to call me out in front of everyone during the meeting. He tells me to remove my hat because it has a logo. I tell him, this isn't a logo. This is my father's military patch, and it's just the flag. The same one we have one hanging up right behind us. He tells me again to take it off. I tell him, why don't you have any respect for our military and flag? This isn't a logo. I then pointed to someone who was wearing a hat with a small logo and asked why they didn't have to remove theirs. That's when the warehouse manager finally had enough and escorted me out. I gave him a mouthful on my way out about the same thing, telling him that it's absolutely ridiculous and disrespectful to call this flag a logo and whatnot. I also pointed to a tattoo I have on my forearm that is a memorial to my grandfather, a decorated Vietnam veteran, and told him that's why the flag means what it means to me. So then I call my staffing agency and tell them what happened. She tells me that she'll investigate it and we'll go from there. I talked to her the next day and she told me that the warehouse manager said that I was being threatening and that my hat had a gun on it or some bullcrap like that. So I immediately emailed her photos of my hat and asked her to speak with the site rep and the other temps who were all witnesses to everything that happened because I never threatened anybody and saw exactly what my hat looked like and could say with 100% certainty that it was just the flag. She said she believed me, and I eventually got another job at another warehouse a few days later. So yeah, these piece of crap assholes will lie on you so fast, it'll make your head spin. Story 42. Back when I was fresh out of college and living at home again, I was trying to get a job until I could get something else related to my degree. Got a working interview at vet's office for the kennels. I get there about 7:20, was told to be there by 7:30, but the place isn't open. I wait outside and try calling a couple times, but no one picks up. I can't see anyone in the office. Finally, when they open at 8, someone lets me in and starts showing me what to do, and I spend the next 4 hours doing kennel duty with another girl who works there. I'd also explained that I was outside, but no one was there to let me in. I'm told not to worry about it. At noon, I go to the lady who set up the interview, and she tells me they aren't going to hire me because I was late. Mind you, she's been there this whole time. I'm confused by this and tell her when I got there and couldn't reach anyone to let me in. She tells me I was supposed to park in the back of the shopping center and go through the back doors. I tell her that I wasn't told this information, just the arrival time. She argues that I was told this information, but I definitely was not because I would have gone to the correct place. Whatever, this is obviously a place I don't want to work if I have to deal with this lady. What gets my goat is that if this isn't why they weren't going to hire me, they should have let me know when they let me in, not at the end of the 4 hours. Story 43. I worked for a home healthcare company. We serviced hospital beds, wheelchairs, and most importantly, provided oxygen at home. The work was always stressful, with low pay and long hours. We held a meeting with all the drivers, saying we needed to sign in before unloading trucks every evening to avoid getting paid too much overtime. I suggested unloading trucks in the morning because working outside of normal working hours was a bad idea, and I wasn't going to do it. We also had a rule. If you turned down work, you were fired, even if it meant adding it to your route during the day. So they started adding extra stops to my route. Eventually, I was fired for excessive overtime. Even though it was because I was taking on extra stops, I really should have sued, especially when they tried to challenge my unemployment benefits. Story 44. I got a contract as a data analyst with a big company. It was my dream job. I did every task as instructed, learned SQL on the fly to go beyond my duties, got in early, the works. One day I made the mistake of mentioning that I was still in school. My manager clearly judged the hell out of me, as I was 28 working on my bachelor's. Life happened. I had to drop out and start up years later. She then went to the guy who was giving me tasks and said I was talking crap about him. I asked her if I could work a later schedule and take a morning class. She asked what I meant. I said, like Josh, fake name, just come in a little later and a little leave later. I assumed it'd be fine since we worked together and our schedules would align. She immediately went to him and claimed I was crap-talking his work ethic. Ridiculous. This caused him to stop giving me tasks and ignore my requests for new projects. She then went to the staffing agency and claimed I wasn't showing up to work and wasn't working. Since it was a contract gig, that was it. I lost my job after working diligently for 11 months because this asshole judged me for not having a degree. Still bothers me. Story 45. Recently got told I failed my probation at a pizza place that opened up before Christmas for apparently standing around doing nothing, but they were always overstaffed and there wasn't much to do. Personally, think it's cause they needed me for the busy opening period of the store, and then to get rid of me once things died down. Story 46. I've only ever been terminated for lack of work or because my department was abolished, with one exception. I started working for Amazon when I was 63 years old and I couldn't keep up. Couldn't work fast enough for them. F them and the horse they rode in on. I did my work well, not fast. I would see boxes going down the conveyor belt that looked like a cat had put them together. Story 47. I was working in a meat department of a grocery store. I cleaned the grinder the night before and was in the next morning doing other things. The guy making sausage came out from the back and said the blade was not put back properly and it destroyed the machine. I remember thinking that I put it together properly, but honestly, I was just feeling terrible and it was essentially his word versus mine. But I didn't say anything as he was a respected member of the team and it wasn't coming off my pay or anything. To make sausage, you have to change the faceplate to one with bigger holes, so he would have had to take it apart again before he even turned it on. I'm surprised everyone just took his word because if they actually thought about it, it doesn't make any sense. Story 48. A few years ago, I converted an AP temp to full-time. 2 weeks in, she said she had to take time off because her dad passed away and was worried about PTO. Told her not to worry about it. I'll approve her for bereavement and to just let me know her travel schedule. Well, she had already friended some of the rest of the team on social media, and they weren't pleased when she started posting pics and videos from Vegas. I confronted her when she returned, and she doubled down saying it was part of the celebration of life. I smelled BS, so asked for funeral info and travel docs since she said she was traveling to a different city for the arrangements. She came back with clearly forged copies of boarding passes and a horrendously photoshopped funeral program. Like a 5-year-old could have done better. At this point, the CFO is involved and calls the funeral home. And you guessed it, no record of any services for that person. After lengthy conversations with our employment attorney, I termed her, and she still would not admit to making it up just to go on her Vegas trip. Story 49. Story 50. Office work is so much easier from my experience. You get to sit around all day and you don't have to put up with all the look busy nonsense where they tell you to sweep or mop the floor for 7 hours. Not all warehouse/factory jobs are this bad, but a shocking number of them are this bad or worse because of management or coworkers. I like to get dirty and I like to be on my feet all day, but really, it's not worth it when there's BS you got to put up with, especially during downtime. I'll sit in my damn office chair watching Netflix or whatever when my work is done. Story 51. CEO of a company I audited misused a tax account that was created to cover the taxes of his life insurance policy. The CEO was making nearly $750,000 annually. He embezzled about $43,000. Once we brought it up to the board, he paid it all back within a week. The board hired another CPA firm to confirm our findings, which they agreed with. The board fired him and reported him to the bond company, which revoked his bendability. It was a hit job, though. The CEO was having relations with an entry-level employee that had a second job at one of those restaurants where the waitresses barely wear any clothes. The COO was the CEO's ex-wife friend. The COO brought up the misuse of the account to me directly, or we would have never seen it. Last I checked, the COO is now the CEO and has been for about a decade. Story 52. I'm 23 and have worked this retail job since I was 20. I've always been in good standing with my employer and coworkers since I started. I made a mistake of talking too much because I witnessed a lot of others doing it with no repercussion. To my knowledge, I went overboard. At least that's what I was told. I have no clue what to do or how to feel. I have bills to pay alongside college, which I am paying half of my tuition out of pocket. I never thought I would get fired from a job. Story 53. I quit 4 hours into a job last week. I had just left a high-stress job due to a mouthy asshole boss. Wasn't about to do it again. 4 hours in and yelled at 4 times for crap I wasn't told to do their way. It was a great feeling to hear her get sweet as pie again when I quit. She almost sounded surprised with her, "Really?" The boss never called me to follow up. Nothing. "Sorry this happened to you, but I'm sure you dodged a bullet. You don't want to work with crystal methane anyway." Story 54. I had someone like that. She was on the assembly line, but apparently she knew everything I was doing wrong. As a heavy machinery operator, she has no experience. So I'd get pulled into HR daily because this Karen complained I did something wrong or was not doing something. Then I'd have to explain to this temp company HR rep that has never lifted a finger for anything past a jelly donut how my job works, and she would still try to get me to sign the write-up. Story 55. I quit in the middle of busy season with 0 notice. Typed up my resignation letter at work, my client list, my project list, and where I was at. Turned in the letter and lists along with my laptop to the front desk and just walked out. Got a call from my manager and from the managing partner of the firm. Had serious mental health issues I got resolved a few months after I left. Best decision of my life. How do you deal with getting fired? Story 1. I got fired once because I made the mistake of talking to a manager who didn't like me about a crazy stalker. I had that made me feel unsafe. In reality, I should have just talked to the police. Lesson learned. I was almost fired at a job when I embarrassed a manager who stole work from me and tried to gaslight me. Now I've learned to lock my work down with my name to prevent theft and also communicate loudly about what I'm doing. Story 2. Several years ago, I got hired at an insurance agency. I was pretty persistent with checking in with them through the hiring process. I really wanted the job. They offered me the position. My first day, I find out they hired someone in addition to me. They gave her the job I was hired for. They threw me into sales. Of course, I was terrible at it. Couldn't get even my family to switch providers. They fired me after a couple weeks. It felt intentional. Story 3. Getting fired in your 20s teaches you a valuable lesson that everyone in here will tell you. Don't be loyal to your job. It's only a source of paycheck. Story 4. It can throw you for a mental loop, especially the first time it happens. First, you have a very short pity party. Then, you take a deep breath and start the unemployment application and applying for jobs. Don't get stuck in a space of overthinking things. Don't blast the former employer on social media. Learn from the experience and move forward. Story 5. I was fired for the first time at 30 in November 2023. It was the worst feeling ever. I immediately started applying. I have 10 years experience in my field and was executive level. It took me until February 2024 to secure another job in my field. I never stopped applying. I put in 300 plus applications and interviewed for less than 20 of those. The market is horrible, but know your worth and never stop trying. Crap happens. Story 6. When I lost my last temp job after 8 days, only 5 being full work days, I realized it was more on them for not addressing the issue than it was on me. As how was I supposed to know there was a problem if no warnings were given? They said it's because I wasn't retaining training, yet they never told me they noticed I was having issues or dealing with a learning curve. Plus, there were multiple delays in my training as my first day was postponed, and first 2 days were half days because they didn't have a laptop for me. Then I didn't get a headset until my second work week, and I didn't get my team's phone number so I could handle phone calls until what ended up being my last day. The contract was supposed to be 3 months, and I felt so unmotivated and discouraged after being let go. Ultimately, I'm glad I didn't stay longer, as a few weeks after I started a new job that isn't a temp position, and I'm happy where I'm at now. Story 7. I used to think getting fired would be the worst thing to happen in my career. It turned out good be the most freeing. After being fired last year, it gave the opportunity to find a better job with better pay. Use it as an opportunity. It's all perspective. Also, duck your former employer. It's a two-way street. Story 8. First thing is to understand, this happens to most people at some point, and it always sucks. Doesn't matter the reason why it happened. Don't beat yourself up over it. Sometimes life just says you have to move on. Sign up for unemployment immediately, but know that it's a lengthy process for most states. Took me about 8 weeks to get paid in WA. Your old employer may also fight the claim. This is an emergency backup, not your first line of support. Your state unemployment office will also have job resources. Use whatever ones they have available. It sounds like you don't have room to be picky right now, so just focus on picking up any work. Retail, food service, labor, cleaning, whatever pays. If you have a vehicle or bike, see if contract work like DoorDash or Uber can tide you over. Search your local next door, Facebook, Craigslist, etc. Post to see if anyone is looking for workers. Once you're secure, then you can start shopping for something you actually like. You don't have to stay at what you find. Just get something. I know it's completely unreasonable for many people's situations, but this is a hard lesson on why everyone needs 6 months of savings, minimum. Story 9. Everyone gets fired. I went through a tough year where no matter what I did, I couldn't keep a job to save my life. Kept picking the wrong places. Now I'm a manager making more than I ever have. The job market is brutal. Corporations suck ass, and people are idiots. It's total luck anymore, or who you know. Don't take it personal. You will, but trust me, you are not alone. Story 10. It was a quasi-layoff, as the company stock had tanked 25%, so they looked for any bogus reason they could fire people for cause, and then laid off beyond that around 20% of employees. I recall feeling like my head was spinning. My income was gone. What was I gonna do? I was asking myself. I applied for unemployment, which I got, and then revised my resume and began applying for jobs at a steady clip. But the most important thing for me was just focusing on myself during that time. I was going to the gym more than ever, cooking healthy and cheap meals for myself, spending time with friends, and enjoying myself, all while still applying to jobs. Looking back, it was some of the happiest months of my adult life, and part of me wants to go back to that, especially when I'm down or depressed with my corporate bullcrap job nowadays. Trust me, the immediate shock of being let go will go away within a few days. Story 11. Getting fired from my first adult job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to find something else, and I found something much better. Story 12. I've been laid off and fired. The layoff hurt. It came out of nowhere and was my first time being removed from a position. I struggled to find another job, maybe economic issues at times. Last year, I got fired. It saddened me for like a day and a half. It was for a minuscule reason that just gave them an excuse to get rid of me. And then I realized they were crazy ducks and I was better off without. I moved on so very quickly because it wasn't my first rodeo. There are tons of other places to work. Find another job. Simple as that. Bartending? You can probably find a job doing that fairly quickly and can make decent bank if the place is higher end. Getting fired is not the end of the world. Never beg to go back anywhere. All jobs are temporary. It's merely time to find the next one. Story 13. No begging. I got fired for the first and only time at 22. Similar. I didn't realize how careful you need to be around coworkers and watching your mouth. It was a massive deal when it happened. I'm a good employee, I'm reliable and productive, and it felt like an insult to my entire being. Now, 8 years later, I see 40-year-olds getting ousted for the same thing. From where I am now, I'm really grateful it happened when it did. It's a wonderful lesson, and one that makes so much sense at that age. Apply for unemployment, see if your school has those free pantries or if you can get food stamps, and just apply for jobs. Story 14. Just find anything as fast as possible and keep looking for a better job once you do. I know people say if it doesn't pay enough, it's not worth it, but there is a difference between falling behind on a few bills and ending up homeless. Cut your costs as much as possible to stretch your money. I'm not saying that you'll go broke because of avocado toast and Netflix, but a bunch of little things do add up. Eat healthy but cheap chicken and pork over expensive cuts of meat. Don't be too proud to go to a food pantry, and if you need clothes, a thrift store. Don't stay down about it, it happens. You can say you were laid off due to drop in business. No one calls on lower-end jobs to check. I hate recruiting agencies, but often it's the fastest way to get a job and you can use multiple. Story 15. You lost a crafty min-wage job. You should be able to apply like mad and get a new one within a week. Be aware that favoritism exists. Maybe the manager's dating someone. Maybe they're friends. You may not have the same rights to duck around as everyone else. Maybe that person is really good at their job, or does crap nobody wants to do. Or maybe that person pretends to be discussing work when bullcrap with coworkers. Begging isn't going to do crap. Story 16. If you like to talk, make sure it's to customers only. Otherwise, keep head down, do what the company wants you to do, clock out and go home. Getting fired is terrible, but they did you a favor. A real company would give a verbal, then a write-up, then firing. Story 17. Hey, 48-year-old married father of 2 in the UK here. Please believe me when I say this will, in the end, turn out to be a net positive in the long run. Firstly, you've learned a vital lesson at an early stage in your career. No one at any organization is indispensable. My wife is lucky that she experienced something similar at your age and has since then developed a very healthy relationship with work. It's just a transaction on which she will absolutely not waste any of her own personal mental energy. She's in a senior position and earns good money, but still retains that this is just a job mentality. It took me much later in my career, until I was mid-40s, frankly, to fully understand the transactional nature of work. I was, for want of a better word, fired from my last job. The feeling was mutual, but I'd have rather kept the job. But I was able to immediately get another job, as the interviewers understood that not all people fit in every organization. I'm earning good money in a middle management position, but have learned to full separate my own self-worth from my job. Story 18. I was first fired when I was 20 from a reception job that I admittedly was pretty careless at. I was devastated, left in tears, and felt bereft. I've been fired twice in my life since then, and both times I felt much calmer and was able to recalibrate. I know the feeling, but it's just a job. It's no reflection on your value or what you're capable of achieving/contributing. There's so many more jobs, and you'll be given chances by others. Most people have failed at one job, at least in their lives. It's kind of part of being an adult. Take a day or two to breathe, then try moving forward. This is just a minor blip. Take what you've learned onto the next chapter. Story 19. I got fired for the first time 7 months ago. They got rid of my position. Apparently it sucked. You'll spiral, think what you did wrong, but you just gotta realize it's a job that doesn't care about you and move on. Story 20. That was my third temp job. The 2 before that ended after 3 months. For a majority of my first year after finishing college, I was stuck temping through Robert Half. And that third temp position ending so quickly made me realize I can't keep temping, as I'm not gonna have stability and I won't reach my career goals if I'm stuck temping. I didn't even put that third temp job on my resume, but I did for the first 2, and my supervisor at my current job understood, as she used to temp through Robert Half back in the day, but she never got hired by any of the places she temped at. Story 21. Temping helped me handle rejection, as your last day can come at any time. I had 3 temp jobs, and the first 2 ended after 3 months, which is standard, but my last temp job ended after only 8 days, and only 5 of which were full work days. Losing my last temp position had me feeling hopeless and unmotivated, as I felt like I wasn't really given a chance. They ended my last temp position early, as they felt I wasn't retaining training, despite never addressing this with me, and the fact that much of my training was delayed due to me not getting all the materials I needed for training right away. I cried about that, as it made me feel like I failed, and I was tired of being stuck in a position where I don't have job stability. I took that moment of losing a job sooner than anticipated to start focusing on better opportunities, and made sure to focus more on companies that will directly hire me rather than jobs through temp agencies. Shortly after that, I got my current job, and I've been here for a month, and I'm grateful for where I'm at. I'm not going to say don't apply to retail jobs, as I was in retail for much of college, and I know the struggle of finding non-service jobs where you have the flexibility to balance work and school. Whatever jobs you're going to be applying to, make sure the environment and the company is better than the last one you were at. There are retail jobs with good benefits, but you just have to look harder. Definitely focus on opportunities where you know you'll be happy, and apply to jobs keeping your goals in mind. Story 22. Got fired almost exactly a year ago at 31. Told the VP her metrics of productivity are stupid and make no sense. She made up a reason that I was stealing time, aka having free time, during a workday just like everyone else. Turned out to be the best thing that has happened to me career-wise. I got back into the field I wanted. Super chill work from home job that allows me to raise our kid and work at the same time, which saves us thousands. Way better management, way better team, way better job. I will say it did propel me into trying to be the best one at the job rather than just coasting the middle/lower half. Just because getting fired sucks, and I was really worried there for a while. So I am now one of the best on my team by far. Story 23. I just started a new job yesterday at a small addiction rehab facility, and today the Dion called me before my shift. She said others thought I seemed uninterested during training. The first day, I literally only sat and observed in a small cubicle. I didn't even have a badge or login, so I couldn't walk around or access locked areas. The trainer told me I would just watch yesterday and pass meds the next day, then left me multiple times to gossip with other coworkers. I was orienting on the men's hall instead of the women's hall I was hired for. They bragged about how easy the job was and how much downtime there was. The Dion even told me they don't care about people being on their phones. I only use my phone when left alone or when my trainer was on his as well. And even the techs were sitting in the hallways on theirs. I'm shy and a visual learner, so I may not seem talkative at first, but I pay close attention and absorb everything. I helped clients when techs were unavailable, smiled and introduced myself to everyone, and tried to be helpful throughout a 12-hour shift with no break. The trainer smiled in my face, but then down-talked me to the DON and an administrator I'd never met. I wasn't given a chance to defend myself or show that I was genuinely interested. They could have pulled me aside yesterday or told me after my shift. I genuinely thought the day went great, so I'm shocked. I've never been fired after the first day. Story 24. Recently, life threw me lemons too, so I just started to learn this ridiculous side of employment. Basically, you should write their HR department. HR isn't there to protect you. However, you can persuade them to protect themselves by not firing you. Explain you might have a case against them. They might ring you in. If not, I would file with EEOC just so that later on in life, you get a good check from the business. I would advise to not sign anything from the employer or HR for now, but retain a copy of any agreement they want you to sign. Just negotiate to keep employment because you think you have a case. They will drop the agreements they want you to sign so you can't sue them and hire you back in fear of a looming retaliation claim. Check if you're a single-party consent state. Look for new work, but record anything if your state law allows it. I'm not a lawyer, by the way, if any agency is wondering, because out-of-state lawyers can't give advice. Story 25. Maybe I will find something better either pay-wise or environment-wise. Hopefully both. And while it's annoying when people tell you to be thankful for bad things, I am going to tell you to be thankful that it happened to you early in life/career than later, because it happens to almost everyone. If the stakes are way, way higher when you're only learning about it for the first time in your mid-30s or later, you will bounce back, be more resilient, and be more guarded going forward. The only better option for you would have been for you to see it happen to someone else and then make all the right adjustments yourself. But we rarely feel the impact to the same degree that way, and those lessons don't always stick as well. Story 26. Don't panic. Take some deep breaths. Ensure you're calm and rational-minded. Now take a moment and dream. What do you want to do? Write down own the skills you need. Then write down every skill you know. What transfers? Make a new resume using these lists. Apply for all assistance programs. Don't spend every minute of every day job searching. Use some time on yourself. Learn. Do hobbies. Keep relaxed. Personally, I'd probably avoid the stupid job boards. I've been looking since 2022 for a new job. I'm working, but it's not what I want to do. At the rate I'm picking up new skills, eventually, if I'm not hired by a company, I'll just make my own company. It's a win-win. Story 27. 1. Apply for unemployment. 2. Enjoy your newfound freedom for a day or two. 3. Look into work-study opportunities at school. 4. When they ask you reason for leaving on the application, you can leave that blank. It's not mandatory. If you're ever asked in person why you're changing jobs, just say you've been at your old job for a while and you're looking for a new opportunity. 5. Look for work in areas that actually interest you. For example, if you like gardening, maybe your next job could be at a nursery rather than a retail shop. 6. As someone else said, don't take it personally, it's just a job. Learn a lesson and move on. I'm sure your retail job wasn't creating world peace. Story 28. I was put on a performance improvement plan and fired recent-ish. I took the time off to enjoy spending my severance, enjoying my 2-month vacation while working part-time in retail for fun, and now I'm starting my new job next week with $10,000 higher pay than my previous job. Key takeaway is don't stress and try to tailor your lifestyle to your circumstances. Currently living with my girlfriend and her parents so I don't pay rent. I also recognize that my job isn't my worth. It was hard initially, but know that this was just a bad circumstance and that you'll find something better. Story 29. Going through the same thing right now too. Got laid off from a fast food job as of March when they were about to raise the minimum wage. And reasoning was that they said they couldn't see me trying to excel at my role. I was honestly doing everything I feel is more than what I should do. It honestly broke me for like a couple of weeks. And now I'm still searching for a job, while my partner's helping me through my college. The job market really is cruel right now, full of sales job posting. Story 30. Find a call center to get you through the rough patch until you can find better. People with experience struggle because of that. Companies don't want to pay them what they're worth. You probably stand a better chance of landing a job. Just think to yourself, I found a better job and it's so easy. Losing that job was the best thing that's happened to me. I personally believe you're already working for a better wage and a better company. Story 31. Unfortunately, getting fired is part of working. Most people get fired once or twice, or laid off in lieu of firing in some instances. Don't let it get you down. Take 24 to 72 hours and to feel bad for yourself, and then pick yourself up and start looking for new jobs. But remember, it's easier to get a job once you already have one. So maybe try a temp agency just so you can get some more experience and have a job while applying for a new one. Story 32. First thing I do is go back and see if I can hold the employer liable for anything. If you were just fired willy-nilly, no warnings or documented write-ups, likely they didn't follow their own procedure for dismissal. Now they can't really prove why you were fired. If this is the case, you should file a complaint with your state employment office. Because of your age, I assume they are taking advantage of you. You have rights. Story 33. Apply to other retail jobs. The fact that you were there for 3 years really works in your favor in terms of your resume. If they ask why you left or are looking for a new opportunity, say something along the lines of, wanting a new experience to be able to build upon your existing skill set of XYZ. They really can't find out that you were fired unless they happen to have a direct connection with that other workplace. Story 34. I internalize it and eventually believe I'll fail at everything deep down. Don't do that though. It's stupid. It's just a job and all you did was be a human and follow your values. The best part about getting fired though is like, oh good, I don't have to go back there today then. Always has led me to better things and more success. But it does hurt. Story 35. Do not beg. Takes a few days to get over, typically. Know you will likely land at a better place. Just take care of yourself. Do some exercise. Go do things you enjoy. Disconnect from the last place you worked. And fire up job search. Go apply places soon. You had an easy job to replace. Those are not high-level jobs that take a while to get. Story 36. I've been fired once. It was during a very stressful time already and I was going through serious depression. So honestly, it felt like, of course, why wouldn't I be fired? I'm clearly to blame here. IDK how normal people deal with it. Story 37. I'd say hustle to find a new job as soon as possible. Put applications in everywhere. Don't worry. Getting fired happens, and it happens to most of us. You'll find something much better. Just make sure you learn from the experience.